What's up, guys? Welcome to G Whiskey. My name is Jeff. This is a channel where I offer my thoughts and opinions on a specific whiskey, and if you stick around at the end, I'll be giving it a score as well. That sounds interesting? Hit subscribe down below. And with that out of the way, let's jump into our review. Today we're looking at the Kavalan Solist Port. Stick around. Alright, so today we're rounding out my series on the very much not entry-level whiskeys in the Kavalan Solist range. They're entry-level in terms of that range because they're the cheapest from the Solist line, but they're definitely premiumly priced. So yeah, entry-level is definitely the wrong word. Anyway, today I'm looking at the port one, which shockingly was matured in a port cask. And I don't have the best, I guess, relationship with port. I don't always like port. Sometimes it's good, sometimes not so much. So this was probably the riskiest of the four for me to buy, for me to pick up personally based on my taste. But then again, it's a Kavalan Solist and I have a lot of faith in that range. I don't think I've ever had a bad whiskey from the Solist line. As I mentioned, this is the last of 4 videos I'm doing on the Solist line, and I'm trying not to repeat the same stuff in every video. So in the bourbon review, I mentioned how to determine the age of your Kavalan Solist. I'll link that up there. And I also talked about how after I'm done these ones, I'm going to be doing a blind shootout with all 4 of these Kavalan Solists, so I'm really looking forward to doing that. Back to our port here, this is probably the 3rd bottle that I've owned. I had 2 prior to this. They were split with friends, and I did enjoy them. Again, I'm not a huge fan of port, but I am a huge fan of Kavalan Solists. And of course, anytime you're doing single cask whiskeys or drinking single cask whiskeys, you might find some variation there. Of course, they're batch whiskeys, so there will be subtle differences. In fact, it happened to me earlier this week. I had a friend come over, and he brought with him a sample of a Kavalan Solist port that was 11 years old. Now, in contrast, the bottle I've got here is only 6 years old. So unsurprisingly, we did have some pretty dramatic differences there. So it really is a case of you don't know what you're going to get with these ones. Of course, you do have the online community, you have online resources, but those don't always work out when it comes to these Kavalan Solist bottles because you might be looking up your specific batch because of course that's what you want to know about and come up with nothing. And when you factor in the high price tag, unless you're picking up a batch that you know to be good, you really are throwing caution to the wind when you pick up one of these whiskeys. Now, of course, it's a well-respected range. They make fantastic whiskeys. But with any batch whiskey, you just never know. But with all that said, let's jump into our review of this one, see what it's all about, and in the meantime, if you could kindly leave a like down below, that'd be greatly appreciated. So my specific batch here comes in at 58.6%. It's of course non-chill filtered and naturally colored. So we've got our beautiful natural color here. The problem with doing 4 reviews back to back is that you are going to end up repeating yourself. I've said this 3 times now. I absolutely love the Solist bottles. I love the designs. I love the font. I love the color scheme on this one specifically. I think it looks great. So presentation score here is going to be 5 out of 5. It tells us it's naturally presented with dates of distillation, dates of bottling, cask numbers, all that fun stuff. There's no stories. There's no legends. I don't even think there's much in terms of tasting notes, but that's fine. So great info, great look to this bottle. I'm a big fan. So I did add some water to this. Let's try the nose. Beautiful, rich, intense berries. Vanilla, custard. Some red currant in here maybe. Sweet red currant. Sweet blueberries. Sweet raspberries, sweet strawberries. Berry jam. Berry turnover. Berries, lots of berries. We also have baking spices, we have leather in here. Now this is going to come across as a very snooty reference, but I'm going to say it anyway. This reminds me of a perfume by Tom Ford called Tuscan Leather. I'm getting that in here. It's really just like a fruit salad or like a berry salad, like vanilla pudding with loads of berries in it. That's what it is. Yeah, you might say it's a berry complex nose. Fuck. And now the palate. Really powerful mouth coating, intense, definitely a continuation of the nose. Like it's a full basket of every berry you can think of. I get a bit of a berry wine cooler note, which is a note I often get in port casks. I am getting that in here. Usually I don't like it. This one's making it work. There's also some cinnamon, some oak, and some pepper. And now the finish. Okay. More spices. Cinnamon toast. Toasted brown bread with cinnamon on it and butter. Cardamom. Pepper. White grapes. Definitely some oak. We've also got a bit of a salty, savory note in this. I wouldn't call it a meaty whiskey, but just shy of that. We've also got some herb garden type notes in here and some Christmas cake. It's a long, complex finish. So this is pretty much a typical Kavalan Solist whiskey in the sense that it gives us some of the most dense and intense flavors you're ever likely to get in a whiskey. Kavalan Solist whiskeys, they always have really nice flavors, really nice balance. They're well-made whiskeys. But the selling point, the thing that really sets them apart is that intensity and that density. And this one's no different. Huge flavors in here. And as I mentioned earlier, port matured whiskeys for me can be a little bit iffy. I definitely don't always love them. I also said in the tasting notes that I have that berry wine cooler note. That's something I find in a lot of port matured whiskeys. And usually I don't like that taste. I don't like that note, and it can affect my enjoyment of the whiskey. That being said, there are quite a few whiskeys that make that note, or at least the port maturation, work for them. I'm a big fan of the Glenmorangie 14 Kinta Reuben. Great value on that one. It's a delicious whiskey. Also, my guilty pleasure brand, I'm a big fan of Dalmore. I really like their port release. So definitely there's a lot of port stuff out there that I think does work. And of course, this one is better than those two, which of course it should be. It better be. It's way more expensive. It's way more premium. It's a Kavalan. But yeah, this is another one of those whiskeys that gets port right. And even with that wine cooler note in here, it doesn't come across sort of like cheap or just bad. And of course, we have some beautiful other notes in here, like those berries. Like there's just every kind of berry in here, and they're delicious. They are very sweet. Luckily, we have notes like oak and leather in here that kind of counterbalance all that sweetness. We have a nice balance to the whiskey. So how does this one compare to the other three Solists that I've already reviewed on the channel? I do like this one less. I think it's the weakest one, but I think it's the weakest one within the context of being a Kavalan Solist. If we look at it within the context of being a quality single malt whiskey, I think this is super, it's fantastic, it's wonderful, all of those words. So my score here is going to be 88. I almost went as high as 89. And really the only thing holding this whiskey back from being scored as high as the other three whiskeys that I touched on is just the fact that it's port. You know, I have my own biases, I have my own set of preferences, and despite being one of the best port whiskeys I've ever had, it's just a set of flavors that I tend to like a little bit less. And obviously that's no fault of the whiskey, so really if you're a fan of port, if you like port matured whiskeys, this one might easily be your favorite of the bunch. And even for me, 88 speaks for itself. This is a spectacular whiskey. It's dense, it's intense, it's interesting, it's complex, it's balanced. It's really good. Now you could criticize this one as you might any Solist release for trading in subtlety and nuance for boldness and intensity. Yeah, that is a fair criticism, but I think most people at this point know what they're signing up for when they buy a Kavalan Solist. You're getting some balls to the wall flavor, and this one delivers. Anyway, this is our last one. This one wraps up my reviews of the Solist line. Obviously, there are other Solist expressions out there, a lot of them, but these are the four that I have. And I didn't like these four whiskeys. I love them. Anything from the Solist line is going to be really solid whiskey and worth exploring. So it's definitely a whiskey that I'm going to recommend as long as the price is reasonable, which it often isn't. So price and availability are kind of all over the place. That's going to depend on your market. Some people are being drastically overcharged. Others can still find it at a reasonable price. I've heard from a lot of people who simply can't track these whiskeys down at all. So there's definitely an element of luck involved when you're buying a Kavalan whiskey, especially if you're in the Western world. As for me here in Taiwan, I'm okay with the price, but of course I got a great price on it. I paid roughly 110 US or 85 pounds, which is a steal. But you're going to have to spend more than I did on these bottles, so of course the decision does fall on you. Now, I have said this 4 times now, these are premium whiskeys. They're luxury whiskeys. They do taste the part. I do think they're worth spending good money on, but hopefully it's a reasonable price tag. I know there are some markets where they drastically overcharge for these. Listen, buy it if you can. If you can't, skip it. Okay, that's it for me today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to help support the channel, please consider becoming a patron. Otherwise, you can like, comment, and subscribe. I do want to hear from you. Have you tried our Kavalan Solist Port Cask? What were your thoughts? Finally, down in the comments below, let me know what you want to see me review next, and I'll keep it in mind for my upcoming videos. Bye guys.